You are listening to the Charles Carroll Society Show, episode 05, 2018. I am your host, the self-appointed Bard of the American Redoubt. Today, I've decided to talk about something a little bit lighter, but I think that is a important thing for the Patriot community, the Liberty community, the traditional Catholic community, everyone who is involved and interested in restoring Western civilization can learn from. And it's going to be, just stick with it. I think it's very important. It's been tearing up. There's been 30, 40 news articles written about it already. And most of my audience probably hasn't noticed, but the question is how the Black Panther movie, which is coming out this week, and is it alt-right? And is it a movie that white nationalists can like? Literally, that's the story. It's pretty interesting. So I think the title of this episode will be, is Marvel Studios movie The Black Panther alt-right? So let's get started.
This is a war, and this is your fate. We are the face of your new police state. We are the law, and we've got the guns. Statutory power, mandatory minimums. We are the SWAT. We're here for your part and all the cash that you got. We are adrenaline junkies taking orders from the czar. It's a no-knock raid. Don't be afraid. Paramilitary police state on parade. It's a no-knock.
If this is your first time stopping by, thanks for stopping by. I provide political commentary as well as documenting my personal family and my journey from urban environment, but my family's journey from suburbia to a more self-sufficient rural lifestyle in deep red states, something we call the American Redoubt movement. The Charles Carroll Society is produced for your enjoyment every week, and you can find most of the notes and a lot of backup material on the blog, which is charlescarrollsociety.com. Charles Carroll was the only Catholic signer of the Declaration of Independence. Benjamin Franklin is reported as saying he may be a papist, but he's a good patriot. It's very remarkable as a white man. Obviously, Charles Carroll couldn't vote or hold office when he financially supported the revolution, the American Revolution from the British rule. So we named it as a person who believes in liberty and also a person who is a traditional Catholic. I named the show in his honor. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, hit that like button, share, and really get down to it. So let's get to the show. So why am I covering the Black Panther at all? It's a movie. It's a superhero movie. It's kind of funny. By the way, for people coming in, like I said, this is my second YouTube video. I'm doing my best to learn and to understand the video. It's a lot of respect to people out there who do this stuff every day. I don't understand how you get there. But I've been doing a podcast for many years, audio only, and I kind of like I like the podcast, but I'm trying to obviously grow the community, grow the platform, and reach a broader audience. So I decided to start doing YouTube or videos in general. So, and generally I do videos mostly on, guns, tractors, a lot of political commentary, a lot of what's happening in Idaho, Wyoming, and Montana, a lot of interviewing of candidates. This is the kind of things that we kind of focus on. But sometimes, something that a lot of people don't know who have not been in this battle for a long time is that you need to understand morale and welfare. In other words, you need to keep the troops' morale up. And in my opinion, the battle for Western civilization is a marathon race that's going to go on long after you and I are dead and gone. And so this is something that we're building. The foundations of Western civilization took thousands of years, and many genius level committed people, many of them Catholic priests, by the way, who built Western civilization, all those huge monument, massive forts, bringing Western civilization and logic and civilization just to the planet. And so if we're going to be someone who actually continues with that, then we need to take a look at that and understand that it's a marathon. So, but pardon me for all the issues I may have in video podcasting. If you have any constructive criticism, let me know in the comments, please, of course. And then, I just keep trying to improve as I go. So what caught my attention about Marvel movies? Marvel movies, as you know, there's I think 17 Marvel movies out there. They're comic book movies. I never thought in all of my life that as a kid, my little teenage time of reading comic books and trading comic books with my friends and arguing about who's this, that, and who's more powerful than this and that. I never thought in a million years that it would ever be useful as an adult. I wish I could have bought Marvel at one time or invested in that early. But it is. So what caught my attention about this? Well, there has been this online kind of activity by people who are either associated with the alt-right, i.e. white nationalists, or people who are who may identify closely to that kind of theory. And they have been pushing the narrative that the Black Panther movie demonstrates the validity of a white ethnostate position. I think it's fairly silly in my opinion, but I think there's some serious people out there and they've been talking, and I think it's kind of interesting. So I, it's just coming across, and I thought to share that. Where I kind of kicked into my gear, I don't know if he's the first guy who went out there, but there's a YouTube channel called Black Pigeon, and he's a Canadian who's lived most of his life he's a Canadian who's lived most of his life actually in various countries, but I think he lives a lot in Japan. I lived in Japan for many years also, as I must say. And I don't know if he aligns with the alt-right. Obviously, liberals don't know anything about the right wing or anything about right-wing politics. Well, there's a few who do. There are some who do. But many liberals just basically outsource it to the Southern Poverty Law Center, SPLC, and they get most of it wrong. They are hardened partisans who really have their own view, and they don't ever present, in my opinion, they don't present the information in a balanced way. And so most of the left doesn't know much about the right, which in our world is beneficial because we can continue to move around. The downside of it is they just paint everybody as alt-right. Black Pigeon himself doesn't identify as alt-right, although he does speak on many alt-right channels, which I might do. He might have alt-right guests on this channel. But just because he, deems to speak to the alt-right, then they call him alt-right, which I don't know. So his deal. But, I follow his channel, and I think sometimes he puts out some interesting content. He has 290,000 subscribers. And the video that he wrote about the Black Panther has received over 130, as of this video, when I'm making this video, it's received over 113,763 views. So, it's got, for YouTube and for the community that we operate in, it's pretty good. I mean, it's not a million whatever, but it's interesting. And he basically makes the point that the Black Panther movie kind of illustrates the white national point, the alt-right point. And alt-right are essentially, you can define them many ways. They used to be defined more broadly, and I think there's some people who still desire to define the alt-right more broadly. But the alt-right people, including Spencer, has been very clear that it stands for white ethnostate. They are 1488 guys, but the way they approach 1488 is just different. That's it. So I believe people when they tell me what they stand for. So I know that 4chan, another community that I monitor and listen to, is really, I think sometimes they've just basically trolled the entire world again. I mean, those guys are really good at trolling the world. And of course, the progressives have no idea about trolling and how to respond to it. Basically, if somebody says you can't say this, 4chan and a lot of people just walk right up there and poke you right in your chest. Boop. I said it. Now what are you going to do? And so these guys don't know how to respond to it and just, talk about it and discuss it. So they always get jammed. That's why the progressives on the left are basically useless because, all they want to do is, ban speech. Oh, ban it. It's, So he puts out this video. I don't know if he put it out first. I found another people who may have started. It was Down with Disney Facebook group, which I, by the way, liked initially because Down with Disney, they, the progressives call it Down with Disney, but actually the real name of the group was Down with Disney's Treatment of Franchises and Fanboys. And basically what it's saying is that, comic books were a subculture, just like, punk rock that I was into, heavy metal I was into, outlaw country I was into, gangster. All of that stuff is just very, very, very subculture. The American Redoubt, just small group of people. And what happens is once you get to a level of popularity, then large media buys you, and Disney bought Marvel and made it Marvel Studios, and then they start slaughtering it. And what you're seeing is this massive social justice warrior attack. Every hero has to be some young, it's a typical social justice warrior nonsense, right? You go look at a movie and every woman is, great looking, is, size 0 and she stands at 5'10" tall and she has 3 PhDs and she's 28. It's like, you're like, and that's just it. And every white man that's shown on TV is basically exactly how they used to show black men, 30 years ago. Every white man is goofy and stupid and just nothing. It's all just social. That's what the social justice warrior, not just like representing women in their natural state or the normal woman in a nice way, an idealized way. I'm going to represent women and minority groups in an unrealistic way. And simultaneously, I'm going to attack and destroy people, white women, white men. We're going to savage them. It's like, well, you guys did this to us 30, 40 years ago and for 200 years. So we're going to do it to you now. That's their response. So that social justice warrior is not just a concept of they're going to say, hey, we're here to trying to look at ourselves in a more positive light. No, we're going to look at ourselves in a stupidly ignorant light. Size 0. I've been around a lot of scientists and engineers in my life. And let me tell you, most of the women aren't knockout 10s, size 0, 28 years old with 3 PhDs. That's not how it works. But we're going to do that while simultaneously savaging everything else. We're going to just debase you just like you debased everything. I wish I knew the name of it. There's a movie created at the turn of the century, right at the 1900s, about the Civil War. And it actually had the most amazing videology. It just used all this video technology that no one used, but it was a completely, white supremacist movie. It just showed blacks in the most ignorant way. And that's what they're doing. That's what the modern social justice warrior does. It's like, not only do we need to live safely, we've got to do that while annihilating, heterosexual white men. And I don't stand for it. I don't believe that's the right way. But anyway, this Down with Disney group I liked, and come to find out some people in the Down with Disney, or maybe the main guy, was a self-identified alt-righter. I don't know that for a fact, but that's what's reported. I don't know the guy. So, I don't know. I don't follow other of his channels, but so he came out and said, basically, let's destroy the Black Panther group. So he starts the group with a kind of a reasonable, stance, like, let's do this, let's do that. Let's talk about Disney annihilating franchises and fanboys in the movies they put out. Let's talk about how Disney destroys them. They've annihilated Pixar. Pixar put out great movies. There was this, my kids watched this movie about this crazy redhead princess with wild hair, and she rides around a horse and she battles some bear or something. And I remember when it came out, and my daughter loved it because my daughter has wild hair and she loved it. And it literally, the little girl in the princess movie was put out there as an anti-Disney princess. She's like this, she could sling a bow, but she wasn't like some super, like, I'm like better than everyone else. She had to do her little princess duties and whatever. But Disney bought her, sliced her up, and made her look just like every other princess. I mean, it's the whole popularity of Pixar was making movies that Disney wouldn't make. So then Disney's so big, they buy Pixar and then force them to make movies that Disney's okay with. So, and that's what they're doing with Star Wars now. That's what they're doing with Marvel now. They're trying to make, or they're going to eventually get there. They're going to make movies, that Disney likes to make, even though everyone else made all their billions or hundreds of millions at least on making movies that people don't want to watch, only what Disney wants to make. But Disney's the big guy. So that group initially had, in my opinion, a valid point. But then, of course, the alt-right. This is why I warned all the Patriots group. One of the reasons why I thought this issue was a great example of things to be careful of. You know, the alt-right starts off with a great thing. Let's do this. Let's do that. Next thing you know, hey, let's attack Black Panther. Well, why? Did Disney piss off the fanboys? Did they not talk about the story validly? No, that's not at all. We're just going to attack the Black Panther because we think it's, whatever, right? So I don't know if it's the Facebook group Down with Disney, which has now been closed, by the way, so you can't join it. Down with Disney's treatment of franchises, or was it Black Pigeon? But they basically made kind of out of nowhere created. I mean, Marvel makes all kind of crazy superhero movies. So the Black Panther, again, as I said, knowing things about comic, I never thought that it would ever be useful to anyone. And I'm sure that it's not. And hey, we try to put out something interesting here in a way that's actually interesting to listen to. So that's the answer. I think the Black Panther came from comic books that were written more than 40 years ago. They were created by two white guys. Black Panther was created by two white guys. It wasn't like this black nationalist, woohoo, this communist group of people created the Black Panther. No, it was a writer editor named the legendary Stan Lee, who appeared in many movies. I mean, the guy is just a genius. He's an old guy now, but he's just a genius. He's wrote, and then, the writer artist Jack Kirby. These are the guys, the Kirby type comic. Kirby just did a lot of Kirby comics just did the movie, Thor Ragnarok when he was walking around. That's a Kirby type comic. I think it was released in 1966, July 1966. So it's a long time ago, long before many people who were involved were there. I mean, and they don't remember. These guys, that was the comic book. He released it, I think, in the Fantastic Four. And if I remember the comic book correctly, the Black Panther, he captures the Fantastic Four and then hunts them for sport. He hunts the other heroes to show, to test how good he is. And then at the end, he decides not to kill them and they talk him into being a better guy and whatever. So it's just, to me, it's whatever. So that's the history of it. 1966, most people don't realize that when the Black Panther came out, the Black Panther was was the first black superhero, period. And came in 66 in a time when TV and media dominated by whoever, was what only portrayed black men as ignorant, only portrayed black men as terrible people and blah, blah, blah. And incompetent people. So it was very exciting. Yes. For a lot of us, and when I'm doing these videos, man, it's like incredible. The heat, all the lights on me and stuff like that. But anyway, sorry. But he didn't invent the concept of Black Panther. Stan Lee didn't. Most people would be interested in knowing that the first kind of major thing that I can find that had the Black Panther associated with black men from America was the 761st Tank Battalion and World War II. They were the first people who used the imagery of Black Panther, that used the concept of Black Panther, was the 76st Tank Battalion in World War II. And I'll go that. So remember, the alt-right has seemed to say, one, we're going to try to associate Black Panther with white nationalism to demonstrate that he's a nationalist, he protects his people, and thus, that he's a representative of what we're trying to convince white people to do. At the same time, this other group in Facebook is like, let's just I don't know what reason. I don't know what they gave the reason, which was, were they not pure to the comics, which they were? Were they not true to the original storyline, which they did? The director is a guy named Ryan Coogler, Coogler. And he's a really young guy, but he seems to be a really good director. To be a guy in his mid-30s and to put together decent movies. I'm trying to bloody well put a video vlog together, and it's like a lot of work. And, until you do it, you don't realize how much work it is. But these guys, some of these guys have said, let's glom onto it and say, this is a great example of who we are. Others have said, let's use this to attack it. at this time of this podcast, already, I don't know how they do this because Black Panther movie's not out yet, but IMDb has a public rating for Black Panther of 6.6 out of 10 with 11,168 reviews. Rotten Tomatoes has I don't really pay ever, they have Rotten Tomatoes has a view of 8.3 out of 10 or a 97%, which is very high. They don't have any of the people who've gone and see it. So is this thing more like alt-right? I don't particularly think so. It never occurred to me until, some white nationalists decided to like try to make this a point. It's, you know, I don't know. I watched when Thor was made, the original Thor. I mean, obviously Thor is literally the Vikings, the Denmark, the Danish, concept. It's their mythology, right? The Greek, the Roman, but this is a Viking type mythology, the god of thunder and war, maybe just thunder. I don't know if he's the god of war, but it was a bit of a controversy that the director, I think his name was Kenneth Bragg, Braghan, Branagh, the guy who originally directed a Thor. He cast Idris Elba as Heimdall. So, you know, I mean, if you're going to make the Vikings had their own deities, none of them were black or Asian or whatever. And one of the deities, the guy who guards the bridge, was cast as a black guy. All the other actors, one was an Asian, but like Thor had his companions. They were all white. You know, Odin's white, Thor's mother's white, Thor's white. It's not like they cast Thor as Will Smith or anything, or Wesley Snipes. Wesley Snipes. That doesn't really kind of match. And I could see how the fanboys might say, no, thank you, because it's like different than the original media. But they did cast Idris Elba, who's a really great actor, as Heimdall, and so I looked at that and it's like, oh yeah, that's. But you know, I was like a little bit less interested. I mean, it was like it didn't hurt. It didn't distract from the story as much, because there's only one. But I can understand. But then I realized that the people who were like organizing the protests, these people were called the Council of Conservative Citizens. So I'm like, oh, well, conservative, great, right? Yeah, okay. So I look into these guys a little bit more. No, not so cool. These guys actually came from a white nationalist organization from the time of segregation, who were protesting the ability of all American children to go to public schools. If I'm getting charged taxes, then my children can go to my local public school. That's the rule. That should be the rule. My local public school. I'm not really into busing, but the concept of, as I live here, then my children have the right to go to the school that's here. Most people call this Council of Conservative Citizens, in the old days, they called them the White Citizens Council. And so I did a little bit more digging. Yes, they do condemn interracial marriages, like most of the alt-right. They refer to Americans of African descent as a retrograde species of humanity. And then, of course, they started protesting a lot with the Sons of the South and other white separatist groups. That's why people try to say the American Redoubt is absolutely 100%, you know, just like everybody else, and it's not. But I was like, soon as that, you know, I mean, like, how do you, even though that's the issue, right? The progressives don't acknowledge that, you know, I mean, it's Thor and it's Asgard. It's a Viking story. It's a Danish story. It's a Denmark story. It's their people. It's their people's story. Why can't we tell their people's story? Yeah, that's a point. Why do we have to have a black actor in a pretty much white movie? And I can understand that. And they don't. But then you start going, well, that's kind of booty. But well, you know, okay, there's one part that was in it. But then you find out the people who are making the biggest noise are just completely somebody you don't want to be around. The White Citizens Council. Black people are a retrograde species of humanity. That's what, thank you. Check, done, good. But okay, so let's look at this, right? the HBO has a hit things, and of course, many people in this audience don't watch because it's like an R-rated, should be X-rated in some ways. Absolute, just pornographic. It's like some kind of, it's just it's a really good story. The books are incredibly good, but it's some kind of Murder, She Wrote, absolute violent, meet J.R. Tolkien or, Lord of the Rings type stuff. It's, absolutely violent and it's a fairly interesting story called Game of Thrones, right? Well, if you look through Game of Thrones, nearly every person in Game of Thrones is white. Is that white because they're alt-right? Black Pigeon? Are they black? No, you could believe that, but what they tell me is they're all white because they're trying to stay true to the author's story, and the author's story wrote all white characters. I've literally seen black progressives and white progressives go, oh, I just can't believe that Game of Thrones has a mostly white cast. Well, the guy who wrote the books wrote it all white. I don't know. And you know why he wrote it all white? I bet because he's a huge fan of J.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, who wrote an all white story. The elves are all white. A lot of people are white. Yeah, they put some characters in there sometimes to diversify. Everybody wants to go to movies and see themselves as a hero, right? They want to, if I'm spending, it's $100 to go to movies for a family nowadays. Let me tell you. Good Lord, it's not quick, but, if you're going to go to movies and pay $100, then you want to see something looking good up there, And so, that's why I'm not a fan of the people who take Asian movies and make white. If they're Asian movies, let Asian actors do it. It's just let it go. Let it go. Right. That's the what's that? Frozen. That's one of my daughters likes that Frozen thing or liked it. Now she's over it. But, was The Lord of the Rings a white nationalist movie? Because it was mostly white. I don't think The Lord of the Rings had any black characters in it or Asian or any. Was that? I didn't see it as that. Was that? But it just, the actor, I think with Peter Jackson, he tried to do his best to bring the author's work, the actual author's book to screen. And he wrote it this way. If he had one or two black actors, would that have taken away from the movie? No, but he didn't feel like, putting anybody in that. So I'm okay with that. Just like the Black Panther the Black Panther was written by two white guys, but it was this whole black empowerment in a time where there were not almost any positive male, heterosexual, positive, black, strong role models. Not really that, he started off as hostile. He was hunting the Fantastic Four, but he ended up being, he started off as what they call that, the anti-hero. He wasn't a villain. He wasn't exactly a hero. He was more like, Punisher. He'd just smoke you. But Black Panther didn't have that Punisher thing, but he had this really, I'm going to do things right. And so young men, why can't we have heroes? Well, why do progressives have to walk in and say all of our heroes have to look like this, have to act like this? That's the authoritarian. If your heroes are not gay and homosexual then there can't be heroes. Well, yeah, they can. Yeah, they can. And, I'm cool with that. And I'm cool with the Lord of the Rings having it never really approached me. Lord of the Rings have an all white character. I didn't see, I don't know. There was a few people online. Maybe I didn't catch it because I don't watch a lot of the progressive SJW media. Maybe there were there. I just didn't notice it. It didn't bother me. I didn't notice it on my side of the tracks, let's put it that way, that anybody was saying anything about that. I was like, it's all white cast, so who cares? But I'll tell you what, the Ride of the Rohirrim, when the Rohirrim comes and saves the city from the terrible orcs, and mostly the orcs are dark, led by the smarter orc, and he's white. But, again, I don't really see it. I just don't focus on that. It's a comic book. It's a fantasy. They're dragons and dwarves. But I don't really see it. I don't think we have to focus on stuff like that. But I will say the Ride of the Rohirrim, I've seen a lot of white nationalists mean that sucker to death. So I think, in my opinion, people, I think that people should just get over most of their work. I think black people are as happy about the Black Panther movie as white people were about Eminem. It's the first of the 17 movies that Marvel's made that has a black lead character. So what? I truly do believe that identity politics is an excuse for affinity politics, black or white. I truly am not. By the way, Richard Spencer, who coined the term alt-right, I've watched a lot of his videos, and he does have a point when he says that pure individualism can't win over the group effort of identity politics. He's right about that, in my opinion. But he's wrong about the solution. Now again, one of the things I wanted to end in this little escapade into Marvel movies and such not was the 761 Tank Battalion. In World War II, the only foreign legion that America ever had was a group of black men who were so angry that their government wouldn't let them fight in World War I that they volunteered to fight for the French. And there are still in France statues to American black servicemen who helped defeat the Germans the first time. In World War II, blacks and white servicemen were not allowed to fight together. They were in a segregated military. So as I said in the Black Panther, Kirby never tells, or Stan Lee never says exactly where he got it. He kind of says he invented it. It kind of came around. But if there were people who used Black Panther that were previous to him, I mean, he may have heard it from there or been influenced. I think he called it the Ebony Panther, and I think he called it the Black Leopard one time, trying to kind of associate it. Because remember, the Black Panther Party was a militant group that were active in the 60s, and they came after the comic. Now, did they get their name from the comic? Probably not. I don't know. Ask them. But the logo and the panther and the concept of this imaginary world where blacks are, this superpowered thing, again, was the first thing that I know of was the 761st Black Panthers of World War II, which were a group of black men who use Sherman medium tanks to defeat the Nazis. They came, I think, to World War II on Omaha Beach, and I think they spent over 180 days in direct combat with the Nazis, destroying the National Socialists of their time. I like those guys. I think they're heroes. General Patton said of the men of the 761st Black Panthers, and I'll read you what he said when they landed in France at the time, or Normandy. He said, "Man, you're the first Negro tankers to ever fight in an American army. I would never have asked for you if you weren't good. I have nothing but the best in my army. I don't care what color you are as long as you go up there and kill those kraut sons of bitches. Everyone has their eye on you and is expecting great things from you. Most of all, your race is looking forward to your success. Don't let them down, and damn you, don't let me down. They say it is patriotic to die for your country. Well, let's see how many patriots we can make out of those German sons of bitches." That's what I'm good with. Now, that's what's taught in schools, and people go, cheer, cheer, cheer. But the white nationalists of the 21st century win because the progressive approved history doesn't tell the whole story. And the white nationalists just say, they're lying. Did you know about this? Because that's a great line. I like it. But Patton is reported or admitted to saying when he returned to his all-white setting at his general staff, he's reporting of saying this about the 761st Black Panthers. He says of the Tank Battalion, "They gave a good first impression, but I have no faith in the inherent fighting ability of the race." He later said in a book that black people just simply weren't smart enough to think fast enough to engage in combat with whites. Kind of like some of the people that you're hearing saying that all their race war that they're trying to dream up is going to be so great because black people can't zero rifles. I can zero rifle. And I can teach others to zero rifle, just like you can. These people always lead to failure. The 76th Black Tank Battalion in World War II earned 1 Medal of Honor, 11 Silver Stars, and 300 Purple Hearts. They fought at Omaha, and they fought in the Battle of the Bulge, slaughtering the white nationalists, National Socialists of their time. The Black Panther movie, to me, just like The Lord of the Rings, it's just a movie. Many people aren't even into the Marvel jump around movies. People are excited. Let them be excited. I think it's a failure of the white nationalists to make a point that they're trying to make. So that's my opinion. If you enjoyed the show, please share it, subscribe, like the show, rate us on your favorite platform. You can find us on YouTube here, iTunes, Stitcher, Blueberry, or TuneIn. You can also chat me up here or at Twitter at MrAlexBarron, on Minds, MrAlexBarron. If you want Western civilization, Christianity, and liberty to survive, you are personally responsible for finding some way to demonstrate your non-compliance with this post-Christian neo-Marxist system. Every week, try to perform some small action of protest, self-reliance, and non-compliance. You can start by sharing this message among your friends and family. Viva Cristo Rey, Viva Cristo Way, Viva Cristo Rey y the Virgin of Guadalupe.